A Wall Street Diary. A Wall Street Diary is the culmination of over a decade of careful contemplation and creation by artist Ganyu. It embodies his long-term observation and artistic reflection on the trajectories of the global economy and the U.S. financial market. Created between March 2011 and March 2012, this series records the historical moment crossing the global financial crisis and the recovery of the U.S. stock market, and is composed of 216 individual works. This marks the first time Ganyu has used visual art to creatively reveal the powerful dynamics of the financial world, presenting the stock market, an influential social phenomenon that profoundly shapes contemporary human life, from multiple perspectives. From a cultural standpoint, the series represents an exploration that fuses Eastern and Western conceptual art, bearing witness to the interweaving of cultures and the universal resonance evoked by financial themes. A Wall Street Diary series has been exhibited at the University of Wisconsin, the China Academy of Art, and Gettysburg College. A Wall Street Diary is composed of daily entries, over 200 works created throughout an entire year. The fluctuating lines and shapes formed by the Dow Jones Index resemble a mechanical, impersonal electrocardiogram of financial activity. In contrast, the artist's handwritten diary entries over these closing charts infuse the work with a personal and emotional human dimension. Each day's record intertwines content ranging from global economic and political news, mainstream commentary, and headline events, to the artist's personal reflections and life moments, all woven together in alternating Chinese and English bilingual text. Taken as a whole, these pieces are not merely individual artworks, they constitute a visual documentary that uses the language of art to chronicle contemporary civilization, financial operations, and collective social sentiment. For example, the entry created on August 8, 2011 called A Black Monday reads as follows: Today, U.S. stocks were severely battered, marking their largest single-day percentage drop since December 2008. On the surface, the sell-off appeared to be triggered by news that analysts at Standard & Poor's downgraded the U.S. debt rating from AAA to AA+. In reality, however, the plunge mainly reflected the negative implications this downgrade carried for the overall macroeconomic outlook. Today felt like another Black Monday, reminiscent of the collapse of Lehman Brothers in 2008, a truly extreme event. U.S. and global stock markets all tumbled across the board, led by financial stocks, especially Bank of America, which fell 23% in a single day. Individual stocks dropped anywhere between 5% and 30%. The main cause was intense panic, combined with margin calls and forced liquidations triggered by program trading. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closed down 634.26 points, a decline of more than 5%. Such a situation had not been seen since the 2008 subprime mortgage crisis, which I personally experienced. But back then, the Dow was only around 6,000 points, whereas now it has reached over 11,000 points, about 74% higher than before. This explains why today's sell-off was so violent. At 10 o'clock in the morning, I received a phone call and the voice on the other end was filled with sorrow. The caller said she was my friend Jiang Neilong's wife. I immediately said, "I know you've come to New York, why don't you both stay at my place this weekend?" But she cried and said, "It's too late." On our second morning after arriving from Salt Lake City, we went out to see the Statue of Liberty. On the way there, Jiang suddenly suffered a heart attack and collapsed by the ferry dock. When the paramedics arrived, his heart had already stopped beating for more than 10 minutes. The emergency team first took him to the nearest downtown hospital for emergency CPR, then transferred him to another hospital in Midtown, which had equipment for extracorporeal cardiac circulation. 2 ambulances drove side by side on parallel lanes to keep the circulation system running while transferring him again, this time to the Columbia University Medical Center uptown, one of the top cardiac hospitals. The entire rescue process took less than 2 hours, involving 3 ambulances and traversing nearly the whole of Manhattan. After the combined efforts of the 3 hospitals, Jiang's vital signs were restored, but his chance of survival was only 30%. Over the phone, I tried to comfort Mrs. Jiang, saying that Columbia University Medical Center was one of the best heart specialists in the world, and that Jiang would surely make it. I dropped everything I was doing and drove straight to Columbia, spending quite some time finding the cardiac emergency unit. When I finally entered, I saw Jiang lying motionless on the bed, covered in tubes and wires, his life still dependent on the extracorporeal circulation system. I then went to the waiting room to see Mrs. Jiang, offering what encouragement I could while gently preparing her for the worst. She said, "Jiang doesn't even have life insurance. Everything depends on the New York doctor's desperate, round-the-clock efforts to keep him alive, but it doesn't look hopeful." I turned to comfort their 2 children when suddenly a nurse burst into the room and shouted, "Mr. Jiang's eyes are moving." We all rushed back in. I saw his wife and children clutching his hands tightly as 2 tears slowly rolled down his cheeks. I let out a deep breath. He was coming back. I looked at my phone. 5:39 p.m. By the time I left the hospital, it was almost 10 at night. I drove slowly through Manhattan, watching the city lights fade beneath the midsummer sky. When I got home, I continued working on Wall Street Diary. What should I write today? A big crash? Or a great rescue? August 8, 2011, 11:53 p.m. West Rathbun, student researcher of Gonyu's solo exhibition curatorial team at Gettysburg College, wrote in his research paper in September 2025, "This approach is exemplified in Yu's A Wall Street Diary series. 216 panels with ripped pieces of black paper pasted against a white background are arranged in a grid. Their rigid forms, which resemble cliffs or mountains, mimic traditional Chinese ink painting with their fluid, expressive nature. Some are drawn on in pen, different colored ink and paint, and some even feature elements of collage, with pasted photographs and printed media excerpts. Each piece of paper is ripped and then cut to match stock market data from March 21, 2011, until March 27, 2012. Yu's dedication to daily documentation in this work makes every aspect significant. Whether looking up close or viewing the image as a whole, there are many things to ponder, learn, or question. Different world events and histories unfold within the facets of each panel, from the charts themselves to the copious notes written in Chinese and English which detail important global events, economic trends, and even excerpts from Yu's personal life. For instance, the panel from October 5, 2011 states, "Steve Jobs, a true visionary, dies today at age 56. The Apple Company logo is featured twice in the panel. Following Jobs' death from pancreatic cancer, Apple's stock suffered a brief dip before rebounding the next day due to investors believing in Apple's success. The panel from the next day features a collaged photo of Steve Jobs from below overlooking the market data, the first use of a printed photograph in the work. One panel appears to show boats sailing across the ocean of data, with the peaks of the data appearing as mountains behind them. Within the piece is also evidence of the Occupy Wall Street movement 1 month after it started in September 2011, with a collaged image of protesters holding signs that say, 'Wall Street is our street.' The protesters, who were advocating for economic equality, occupied an encampment in Zuccotti Park for almost 3 months. A Wall Street Diary, with its use of language, symbolism, and journalism, cements itself as both a work of art and a detailed historical record. Can be understood globally, not just because of its use of both Mandarin and English, but because of its real economic, social, and cultural information that has affected all people since the beginning of globalization. Yu's depiction of many different markets, places, and feelings throughout his career has allowed him to merge these influences into works of art with real global importance. As an observer and participant in the stock market, artist Gonyu plans to continue expanding A Wall Street Diary throughout his artistic career, aspiring to transform it into a visual historical archive. Gonyu recognizes that the stock market is, in fact, a synthesis of contemporary politics, economics, technology, and culture, a microcosm of modern society and individual behavior. From New York to London, from Hong Kong to Tokyo, global economic activity never ceases. The stock market, operating in digital relay day and night, continuously paints new, never-repeated visual landscapes, faithfully recording the complex evolution of modern socio-economic life and human civilization. In essence, Gonyu thought that the financial market is the world's largest form of collective performance art.
Thank you for watching.